What if one single bullet, fired over a century ago, plunged the entire world into a conflict unlike anything seen before? Today, we're unraveling the story of World War I, a conflict that didn't just redraw maps but scarred a generation, invented new ways to fight, and laid the groundwork for many of the global challenges we still grapple with today. Forget dry history textbooks. We're going to walk you through how a seemingly local dispute erupted into what was then called the Great War, and why its lessons are still echoing. Before 1914, Europe was a powder keg, ready to explode. Think of it like a neighborhood with a lot of strong, prideful gangs, each allied with others. There were big empires like Germany and Austria-Hungary on one side, and Britain, France, and Russia on the other. Everyone was trying to get more land, more power, and bigger armies, a practice called militarism. On top of that, many ethnic groups wanted their own independent countries, fueling intense nationalism. It was a tense situation, to say the least, with everyone just waiting for a spark. That spark came on June 28, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated in Sarajevo by a Serbian nationalist. Austria-Hungary was furious and, with Germany's backing, declared war on Serbia. But here's the problem: Serbia was allied with Russia, which was allied with France and Britain. So, like a row of dominoes, the alliances kicked in, and suddenly, what could have been a localized fight turned into a continent-wide catastrophe. Within weeks, the major powers of Europe were at war. On one side were the Central Powers, mainly Germany and Austria-Hungary. On the other were the Allied powers, led by Britain, France, and Russia. The initial fighting was fast-moving, but it quickly ground to a halt on the Western Front. Soldiers dug vast networks of trenches, stretching for hundreds of miles across France and Belgium. Imagine living for years in muddy ditches, constantly under fire, watching friends disappear in explosions. This was trench warfare, a brutal, deadly stalemate. New, terrifying weapons emerged: machine guns that mowed down attacking soldiers, poison gas that choked the lungs, tanks that rumbled across no man's land, and airplanes that spied from above and dropped bombs. It was a truly horrifying way to fight, and millions perished in battles that often gained only a few yards of land. The war wasn't confined to Europe, though. It spread to Africa and Asia as colonial empires fought over territories. The mighty British Navy battled German U-boats in the Atlantic. Even America, initially neutral, was eventually pulled into the fray in 1917 after German submarines sank ships carrying American citizens and supplies. The fresh troops and resources from the United States helped tip the balance. Finally, after 4 years of unimaginable bloodshed and suffering, the Central Powers were exhausted. On November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed, bringing the fighting to an end. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the cost was immense. Around 17 million people, both soldiers and civilians, had died. Entire landscapes were scarred, economies were in ruins, and a generation was lost. The victors then gathered at Versailles to draw up the peace treaty, which placed heavy blame and harsh penalties on Germany. While it officially ended the war, many historians argue that this treaty created deep resentment and instability, planting the seeds for an even greater conflict just 2 decades later. World War I wasn't just a war, it was a turning point that shaped the entire 20th century, altering the course of history in profound ways we still feel today. If you want to understand how these seeds of resentment blossomed into an even bigger war, click on this video about World War II.